U.S. Arab Radio Network presents Season 3 of the Ray Hanania Radio Show, sponsored by Arab News, the leading English-language newspaper in the Middle East. Each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, veteran journalist Ray Hanania explores issues facing Arab Americans on WNZK AM 690 Radio in Detroit and on WDMV AM 700 Radio in Washington, D.C. And now, your host, Ray Hanania. Watch the show live on Arab News Facebook page.
And welcome, everybody. I'm Ray Hanania, and this is the Ray Hanania Show. We got two great guests. First, we're going to speak with Toni Breidinger, the Lebanese-American professional NASCAR driver who competes in the ARCA Menards Series East and West, driving the number 55 Toyota Camry for Venturini Motorsports and in the Toyota Gazoo Racing GR Cup North America competition. Breidinger has become one of the racing industry's most dominant female competitors, winning more than a dozen victories in the U.S. Auto Western Midget Series, a top 10 finish in the ARCA Menards Series East in 4 starts, and 9 of top of 10 finishes in 35 races on the main ARCA Menards Series circuit. And then we're going to speak with Egyptian-American, Arab-American actor and stand-up comedian Ahmed, one of my favorites. He's just phenomenal. I got to see him a few weeks ago do his show. It was just very entertaining. He began his career in Hollywood movies and then expanded to stand-up comedy with the highly successful Axis of Evil comedy tour. Ahmed's stand-up comedy career opened the door for so many other Arab Americans, including myself, to enter the stand-up comedy profession, which is today more recognized than it ever has been. But first, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk with Toni Breidinger, one of the nation's top female NASCAR drivers. I'm Ray Hanania. We'll be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you. Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
What's my ETA?
Your estimated time of arrival is 9:17.
I'm late. I'll have to punch it.
Speeding will save you just 1 minute and 36 seconds. It will also increase your risk of a crash, as well as the odds that you will be stopped and issued an expensive speeding ticket.
Yeah, but...
In 1 year, there were 22,000 speeding-related crashes in Michigan, resulting in 200 deaths.
If I had someone in the car with me, I'd drive slower. But it's just me.
This is not a logical response. Though you have no passenger, surrounding cars contain 27 others, including 5 children and 1 Labrador Retriever.
How do you know all this stuff?
I know everything, Kevin.
Your risk of a crash increases with every mile you drive over the speed limit. So slow down. Speed enforcement is happening now. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain.
And now I want to welcome my guest, Toni Breidinger, just a phenomenal person. Believe it or not, she's a race car driver. You've probably heard of her over the last few years. Her name has really kind of surfaced in racing. Toni, welcome to the program.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Which goal is bigger for you? And I don't know if they're both equal. Is it winning the race? Or, and again, we're talking to an Arab American audience, or being Arab American, achieving something in the U.S. Are they both equal, or which is most important for you?
Yeah, I mean, they both have a lot of meaning for me. I think, winning's a little more surface level, whereas, achieving things as an Arab American hits a little bit closer to home. So they're both great in different ways, for sure.
And you're in racing as deep as anybody I know, but give us a little explanation for those people who only see a race every once in a while. It's far much more complicated than that, isn't it? Tell us the structure, how you compete, and where you're headed.
Yeah, so basically I'm racing in NASCAR right now, and there's different levels. In NASCAR, there's basically a ladder system that most people try to follow to get to the Cup Series, which is the top level. So basically this year I'm racing in the ARCA Series, which is kind of like the first level of like NASCAR racing. And then the next level past that is the Truck Series, which I just made my debut in that in May. And then after that's Xfinity and then the Cup Series. So there's a few different steps within the NASCAR ladder system. And then even like prior to that, I started racing in go-karts, and there's a bunch of other different forms of motorsports beyond NASCAR. But it's kind of the system that I'm trying to follow.
Now, we see all these reports around the country where Las Vegas is going to have a NASCAR race in their city. Chicago is going to have a NASCAR race. It's become very popular. Is this something where we might see you in racing, or are you at that level yet to compete in those races? Yeah,
so a lot of my races, like the truck races or the ARCA races, will be like the Friday or the Saturday before the Cup races. So a lot of times we compete at like the same tracks. I would say about like half of my races are at those same tracks. So yeah, you definitely could probably catch me at a race.
So we want to have a cheering squad here in Chicago for you.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're going to see it. That's phenomenal. And I assume that that's how it would be maybe in Las Vegas and these other cities.
Yeah, so Las Vegas, I won't be racing there, but for instance, like the race that I just did in Illinois, that was kind of I did like the day before like the Cup race. So kind of like depending on the schedule, I usually post like which races I'm going to and all that kind of stuff, so people can kind of know where to find me.
We'll keep up. And by the way, before we go on, what's the best way for people to follow you on Instagram or website? How should they follow you to kind of keep up on your racing competition?
Yeah, I would say I'm on pretty much every single social media platform. I have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I have a website as well. So all those are pretty up to date, and I'll kind of say, okay, I'm racing this weekend, or kind of give people like a heads up on like what my schedule is looking like. And
I think the website is ToniBreidinger.com, I think,
yeah,
correct?
Super easy. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll keep it simple so they can go to all your social media. Does when you race, does you being Arab American, Lebanese American, does that come up a lot? I mean, are people like, they think you're Italian or Hispanic, and then they go, what, you're Arab? Does that come up a lot, or is it pretty much, kind of pushed off to the side? Is it significant or not significant?
Yeah, I think kind of depends on the person. I feel like I've developed like a pretty solid fan base of, Arabs that like come to races. I mean, I've seen like last year, for instance, at one race in Phoenix, this little girl and her family came just to watch me race. So it was really cool to kind of see that I'm bringing kind of like a little bit more of a different fan base in, which has been really exciting and really awesome for me to experience. And yeah, I would say a lot of people don't really, everyone's like, are you Italian, Hispanic? Like nobody ever really knows. So yeah, I would say it comes up like a good bit, but yeah, it's been exciting to kind of bring in a whole different new fan base into
And
NASCAR.
is being a woman rare in the race car industry? I mean, you're one of the, I see a couple, but you're the one name I see all the time. I would say, I think in my intro, I called you the dominant woman racer in the country. How rare
Yeah,
is it?
it's not all that common, especially as you start progressing through the ranks. When I started in go-karts, I used to race against, a few other girls. And then as you kind of like go up through the ranks, I feel like that number dwindles down a little bit. A lot of times I'm the only female racing, or there's one or two females in the field out of like 30 plus drivers. So yeah, there's really not a lot of us.
And tell us about some of the big races, the ones that stand out. What and how you've done. Is it difficult, or are you rising in, progressing through the system? When are you going to be holding up that big NASCAR Cup, winning one of the biggest races around? And again, I see all these different races, and it's very complicated to keep tabs with all the different ones, but I see your name a lot.
Yeah, so I would say kind of the biggest thing that I've done lately was back in May. During my truck series debut, I finished 15th, which I actually made history doing that by becoming the highest finishing female, like making her debut.
Wow.
So that was pretty exciting. And that was definitely, I feel like, helped me that was kind of like a big moment, and kind of not really like a make or break moment, but I was on this big stage of people watching, going up to the next level, and everyone's trying to see like, how is she going to do? So I feel like that kind of helped me. Like that was like a positive direction that I went in, and I'm hoping to kind of keep progressing. But I would say my 5-year plan kind of consists of getting to the Cup Series. So I still have a little ways to go, but I feel like I've been making good gains at it.
And obviously, it's a male-dominated sport, but do they treat you as an equal when you're racing, or do you have to kind of prove yourself all the time?
I would say it depends on the driver. I think, some drivers even subconsciously like drive the woman a little bit harder, not really like a little bit more aggressive. But like I say, for me, when I'm in the seat, I see everyone as a driver, and I don't identify people by who they are. They're just a driver that's ahead of me, so I'm trying to beat them. So I don't see people as any different. I really don't think about, oh, is this driver going to see me as any different? But I do feel like some do, for sure.
And I know that, reading through your bio and everything and some of the stories about you, that your father thought it was going to be just a phase you were going to go through. I'm sure he's accepted now, 14 years later, that this is definitely what my daughter Toni is going to do. Have they accepted it? Has the family accepted the idea that you are going to be a race car driver from now until whenever?
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely from like the past couple of years, I've progressed more in my career to where it's becoming a little more real for them, especially my dad. He's always been pretty realistic, and definitely didn't really see myself going as far as I have. But now that I have gotten here, he's definitely very supportive, and my mom's always been my biggest cheerleader. So yeah, I definitely think they're supportive of it now. And, I've come this far, so we see how much further I can go.
You have there been any scary moments in driving? I mean, it's risky a little bit. And, has there ever been a moment when you thought, wow, this is dangerous?
I'm never scared when I'm in the seat driving myself. I mean, if I'm, getting in a wreck, usually I have like more concern for my car and my truck rather than myself, because I want to just get back out there and race. And usually if you do wreck, you're not going to get back out. You're kind of like retired for the race at that point, just because the speeds you're going at, and if you hit a wall, the odds are against you. But yeah, I would say definitely like this year I had a pretty hard hit that, when that happens, it kind of like rocks you a little bit in the moment, but never kind of deterred me from pursuing this. So yeah.
And how many cars do you race? Do you have a lot of cars that you identify with or race with? How many do you have? Or are these
Yeah.
cars? Tell us the whole structure. I mean, do they have to be sponsored, or do you have your own collection of cars? Explain that to us a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll try to make this a little simple. It's a little complicated, but basically I drive for a team. A couple of the teams that I drive for are Venturini Motorsports and Tricon. So they basically, it's kind of more like they have the trucks or the cars, and then I go and race, and I have to bring sponsors to be able to do that. So it's kind of a simple way of putting it. And then the team has a bunch of cars or trucks just in case, if you do get in a wreck, they have like a backup. So they're equipped with a bunch of cars and trucks, and they always have more. And depending how many races you're doing will depend kind of how many trucks or cars you're using. But yeah, it's definitely a process.
Well, and I know being a woman in a high profile sports puts you out there, and it's easy to embrace things like Victoria's Secret as a racing sponsor. I assume they're a sponsor, correct?
They are, yes.
And you're a model also?
Yeah, I've done a little bit
Wow.
with them, which has been super exciting for me.
Did this bring Victoria's Secret into the racing industry? Because I just don't
Yeah.
see Victoria's Secret getting there sooner before you got there.
Yeah,
some
no,
of the
this
guys.
yeah, we definitely brought them into NASCAR, which has been really exciting that they kind of embraced me into their family and are willing to really support me.
And how many different sponsors that back you? You must have a lot of them. All those stickers on the cars
Yeah.
represent and again, as you point out, it's a team of a couple drivers, and they have all these different cars that you race. You got a lot. Who are some of your big sponsors?
Yeah, so I'd say, this coming weekend I have Raising Cane's on the car, which is they just kind of joined us on board. I have Hot Wheels, which I have a Hot Wheels car that everyone always gets really excited about, looks super cool. Victoria's Secret's a big one. Rootly has been really supportive. So I have so many great brands that have supported me and really embraced my journey and want to kind of uplift me through the NASCAR ladder system, which has been really great. But yeah, anytime you see any logos on my car, that's people that are supporting me.
Those are all different sponsors.
Mhm.
And when you look back at the past several years, what's been the biggest, most exciting moment for your career, do you think?
Definitely my truck debut. I dreamed of that ever since I was little, and that was a really big step for me in my career to be making that. So I'd say it's been my biggest moment so far.
Tell us do you mind explaining what the truck debut means? I mean, do you
Yeah.
actually drive a truck, or
It is actually a truck. Yeah.
What kind
It
of truck?
doesn't, so it
one of those
doesn't,
big F450s that you see on Yellowstone that they drive around?
so it does look like a truck. My truck is a Toyota Tundra Pro, but it doesn't drive like your normal truck would that you're driving down the highway. They're very aerodynamic and they feel, decently similar to the ARCA cars that I race. They're still like a stock car, so they have a very similar kind of like chassis and frame and very similar characteristics, but they're also different because it is a truck, and there's like a big aerodynamic aspect of it, which is kind of a learning curve. So yeah, not to get too complicated, but yeah, it is a truck. It just doesn't feel like your typical truck.
And for people that are watching you and others race, what is it that they should be watching? I mean, it's just going around laps, but are there key things that insiders might know that average people may not recognize right away? Just a couple tips on how to enjoy the race better,
Yeah,
as someone who watches.
yeah, for sure. I think, it's hard to see because I think the easiest thing for people to relate, race cars or motorsports to is themselves driving down the highway, which the cars are not nearly as easy to drive as that. Even when we're going straight, we're moving our hands, for instance, like if you're behind somebody, your truck or your car is going to handle different. If somebody is next to you, that's going to like change how your truck or car reacts. So there's so much going on. Like when people are right next to each other, it changes everything about your truck. If you're in, they call it like clean air or dirty air. So there's a lot going on behind the wheel. And sometimes during races, they'll show in-car cameras and you can really see, how much we're working, how much we're moving. And what's kind of like a big moment for us, like doesn't really look like that on TV sometimes. So yeah, I feel like just kind of learning about all that little stuff. And I think also the easiest way to get into, watching races is by finding a driver that you like and kind of having somebody root for. I feel like that always makes it a lot more exciting.
Is there a significant other out there who isn't intimidated by your tough race car image?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I don't have like a significant other, but I do feel like sometimes people do get a little bit intimidated by me being like a race car driver, but
You got to be somebody very hard to have a relationship with when you're the better driver. And when
exactly.
you're driving down the street and when people pull up next to you and they look at you, do you drive in a car that looks like it's a racing car? Or what's your everyday go-to car when you're not racing?
Yeah, so I don't really have a fancy kind of sports car or anything like that. I have a Toyota Tacoma that I drive, so it's not really, doesn't make me look like a race car driver, but I've driven like a couple nice cars before, and it's just not nearly as fun driving it on the road versus a track. I'm like, what's the point if you can't really have fun with it and kind of push the car to its limits? And I kind of like a big car. I travel so much, I like to be able to throw all my luggage in the back. So yeah.
And then the final question, again, just remind us some of the things that we should be looking forward to with your races coming up, anything that's on the horizon that we could pay attention to and follow.
Yeah, I race pretty much almost every weekend, and I post kind of where I'm going and my schedule on my website and on all of my social media. So I always kind of have a race to look forward to. So yeah.
All right, Toni, listen, thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. This is your second time. You've been so generous to join us and talk to us, and we really appreciate it because it's so unusual. It's so different than politics, and it's so nice to see somebody like you doing so well in an industry where you're actually breaking ground. So we're really excited for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking with comedian Ahmed Ahmed. I'm Ray Hanania. We'll be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Were you recently at the emergency room, urgent care, or at your doctor's office being told you need a hand, wrist, or elbow specialist? At the Katranji Hand Center, we offer the latest techniques in hand, wrist, and elbow care. From sports injuries to work injuries to everyday hand, wrist, and elbow problems, the specialists at Katranji Hand Center are here to get you back on track. Call us in Troy today at 248-869-4263 or visit us at KatranjiHandCenter.com to schedule your appointment today.
Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, and seafood dinners. Plus, they offer big trays of your favorite food and so much more. Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab is located at 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills and is open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So stop in or call Kashat's today at 248-538-9552. That number again, 248-538-9552. Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied. With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
My guest is Ahmed Ahmed, who began his career in Hollywood movies and then expanded to stand-up comedy with the highly successful Access of Evil comedy tour. An Egyptian American, Ahmed Ahmed's career opened the door for so many other Arab Americans to enter stand-up comedy, which is today more recognized than it ever has been. The best way to follow Ahmed is on Instagram at Ahmed Ahmed Comedy. Should I call you by your first or your last name? What do you prefer?
However it rolls off your tongue.
Ahmed, tell us a little bit about your family background and where they came from.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your program. I haven't seen you or talked to you in several years. So it's a nice reconnection. Thanks for reaching out and wanting to chat with me.
I've been in Guantanamo for the last 2 years, so it's okay.
I was born in Helwan, Egypt, which is right outside of Cairo. My dad, my mother and father immigrated to the US when I was about 1 month old. I always tell the story of how my father, he actually got our immigration papers the day I was born.
Wow.
So he came into the hospital room, we're going to America. It was like one of those Lion King moments. And we moved to Riverside, California, right outside of Los Angeles. My dad, he lived the American dream, God rest his soul. He, didn't speak much English. I think he had a few $100s in his pocket. We lived in a studio or 1-bedroom apartment at the time. My mom, my dad, my older sister, myself. He took a job as a gas station attendant, pumping gas at a Shell gas station. I think he was making $1.75 an hour back then.
Wow.
This was 1970. And he just outworked everybody, and he ended up buying the gas station eventually.
Wow.
Which is very, very typical of a Middle Eastern, Arab, mindset back then. You just work 14, 15-hour days. Your hands are greasy. You've got oil all over you. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She learned how to speak English from watching soap operas. And we grew up in Riverside, California. Inside my household was a very traditional Egyptian, Arab, Muslim, sort of insulated and isolated environment. And then outside, it was, like middle America. We lived in the suburbs. I had a relatively pretty normal childhood, elementary school, junior high school. So I grew up very, westernized and very Americanized. I think we were the only Egyptian family in the neighborhood at that time. But we were kind of, my mom was always cooking stuff with like garlic and cumin and cloves and, so our house smelled like just a cultural fantasy going on food-wise. I used to always joke around and say people used to think we were like the Munsters or the Addams Family. We were the weird family on the block. And so, I graduated from high school barely. I was active in high school. I played sports. I was in talent shows. I, ran for class president and did all the cool things you're supposed to do in high school from a social standpoint. I wasn't closed off at all. I was actually very outgoing. And, I grew up watching some of my favorite sitcoms back in the day. Happy Days, and like you mentioned earlier, Chico and the Man, Three's Company, Everybody Loves Raymond, Roseanne, Home Improvement, Seinfeld, The Cosby Show, before, Bill Cosby became Bill Cosby. I grew up watching sitcoms, Good Times, What's Happening. These were TV shows that were like escapism for me.
Yep.
Growing up in a really strict household and trying to blend into American society. Every night I was watching these sitcoms and I would just laugh my butt off and go, you know what? This is cool. And then I started going to movies. And I think one of the first movies I ever saw as a kid was Rocky. And I remember coming out of the movie theater feeling so inspired and so just full of life. And I thought, wow, movies can really move you. And so entertainment was kind of the direction I wanted to go in because I just enjoyed it so much. The entertainment aspect of it, not the glitz and the glamour and the Hollywood toxicity. It was more about not even the money, really. It was just more about entertaining people, making people laugh. My dad had a great sense of humor. He'd always crack jokes, and he was always the guy at the wedding or the birthday party or the dinners or the funerals, even in the corner, smoking a cigarette, holding court. So I think that's where I maybe got it from.
That's an Egyptian thing too, isn't it? The humor. I mean, when we think of humor in the Arab world,
it always starts in Egypt, and then you hear about comedy elsewhere, but it could be dangerous in other countries. But in Egypt, the number of comedians were just amazing.
Yeah, Egypt has been and always like will be considered the Hollywood of the Middle East, and we're considered like the comedians of the Middle East. Egyptians are very, joyful and gregarious and just love to be expressive and passionate. It's a bit of a pushy culture at times if you've ever been to Egypt. But it's a very sort of forward-thinking culture and society. And Egyptians just kind of have that, what they say in Arabic, dem khafif, which means light-blooded. We're light-blooded culture.
So you're on the West Coast, which I think plays into the Hollywood. You're there. That's where movies and you think of sitcoms and entertainment coming up from the West Coast. Yet, when I look at movies, growing up watching the movies, I watched all those same. I'm older than you, obviously, but I watched all those same TV sitcoms. But there were so many movies where we were always, the bad guy. And I'd be eating dinner at the table, and I'd look around, and all my uncles look like the terrorists that I just saw in a scary movie. And how do you get into that? How do you deal with that when you get into that as a profession? How did you deal?
Well, so when I graduated from high school, I moved to Hollywood right away. And I did what every starving, struggling actor does. You get 2 jobs. I worked as a personal trainer during the day. I was a waiter at night. And then on my off nights, I would take acting classes. I eventually got an agent, and I started booking small parts. They call them under five lines. So I was doing very small bit parts in like soap operas and stuff like that. And then I finally, Hollywood had a good 10 years where they were making movies about, terrorism and stereotypical characters, cab drivers, the sleazy Arab prince or whatever's very, very, much of a typecasting, stereotypical journey for me. It's funny because Jack Shaheen, obviously, right?
Oh yeah.
God rest his soul. He wrote a book and made a documentary that he mentioned me in called Real Bad Arabs. Real spelled REEL. And he I think he pointed out over 1,200 movies, TV shows, cartoons, commercials where they depicted Arabs, Middle Easterns, Muslims as like the bad guy.
Right.
And he was really kind of on the forefront of trying to dispel those stereotypes and kind of, normalize us and humanize us.
And you see stereotypes about a lot of other ethnic groups too, but it's usually balanced. You'll get a negative stereotype and a positive stereotype. We seem to just have at least the preponderance were negative, weren't they? You didn't see
it's starting to. Yeah, I mean, it's starting to change now recently a little bit. Like you mentioned in the African American culture, the Latino, Hispanic culture, the Asian, you'll always see the stereotype, but then they counterbalance it with like the doctor, the lawyer, the friend, the police officer, the dentist, whatever. Whereas Arabs and Middle Eastern people never got that. We never got that freedom to express ourselves in the general population as a normal person. So I started for about 7 years. I took every role that was coming at me. The terrorist in this movie, they were cool projects too. I got to work with Kurt Russell and Halle Berry, and I was on these big action movies, that took place on a plane or a train, and I was always the bad guy in the back holding the gun and screaming in the name of Allah and stuff like that. And I started getting a lot of backlash from my own community. I get a lot of haters from the Arab Muslim world saying, "Why are you doing this? You're perpetuating the stereotype. You shouldn't be taking roles like this." But if I don't take this role, they're going to give it to a Samoan guy or a Mexican guy.
Right.
And so it's funny how people in our culture, they get mad at you for taking these parts, but then they're not doing anything about it.
Right.
So I would write scripts about a mainstream family who lives in America, or a sitcom or whatever, and I would try to pitch it to these, Arab or Muslim investors, and say, hey, if you guys want to break this whole stereotypical bubble, we need to write and create our own stuff. And they would say, no, that's not up to us. Leave it, that's Hollywood, and we want to, where we invest in gas stations and strip malls and that kind of thing. The Middle Eastern community, the Arab Muslim community at that time, and still to this day, didn't really understand that you can make an independent movie for the amount of money some of these Arabs have. They spend on a shopping spree with their wives.
Right.
You can make 4 or 5 movies with that with that budget.
And I think you make a good point. I mean, when the best way to change something is to do it from the inside, not from the outside. So
they would always, they'd always say, well, everybody would always complain about Hollywood. I'm like, Hollywood's never gonna write our story. They're just not, because they don't know it. They're not from the inside, like you said. We have to write it. We have to produce it. We have to fund it. We have to edit it and promote it and distribute it. And it's all really in-house. I stopped taking these roles for a while. I haven't worked as an actor since technically 2017 was the last thing I did. I did a short film called The Scapegoat, where I play 4 different characters, which coincidentally was produced and directed by 2 Saudi filmmakers. But I play this guy who has voices in his head. So I play all the different voices in my head. So that was a fun piece to just play as an actor. But prior to that, I played every terrorist role you could imagine. I was the go-to terrorist, for a while. And at one point I called my agent and I said, can I audition for the friend? Can I audition for the police officer? Can I audition for the teacher or whatever? And they'd always say, no, change your name is what they would tell me.
Wow.
And I said, why? They said, because casting people, Hollywood is in a box and they just see your name. If I said my name was Joe, Smith, they wouldn't know where I was from. But because my name is Ahmed, it's a Muslim name, you go right to that Muslim card or Middle East card. And so that was the case. So I refused to change my name. I was really stubborn about it. I said, call me if you have anything other than these terrorist roles. The phone stopped ringing. And then I ran out of money. I went back to waiting tables. I started making a lot of money waiting tables because I was making my customers laugh. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I just get the food aspect out of the way and go right to commerce and just do stand-up comedy?
Wow.
So that's when I had my, my vision, my ru'ya, my epiphany that said, go be a comic, keep your name. It's a catchy name. No one's doing it at the time. No one was doing stand-up comedy from the Middle East.
Right.
At least in the traditional stand-up form.
Right.
And in the sort of contemporary Western, Americanized form. And so I started doing it. I got lucky and got passed at the world famous Comedy Store, which was owned by Mitzi Shore. God rest her soul. She took a chance on me and she just loved my voice. And eventually she hired a couple other Middle Eastern American comics, Maz Jobrani, this cat, Aaron Cater. And we eventually started a show that she called the Arabian Nights. But we later changed it because Iranians aren't Arabs. And a lot of Iranians were getting upset with Maz, like, why do you call yourselves Arab? We are not Arab, we are Persian, we had our own empire. So Maz called me up one day and he said, we got to change the name. Iranians are getting really pissed off. I said, sure. So right at that time, President Bush was in office and he coined the phrase axis of evil.
Great.
So we stole it from him and we just put Comedy Tour in the end. So we were called the Axis of Evil Comedy Tour. Nobody saw that coming. I didn't even see it coming.
It was great.
What's that?
It was great. I was saying it was great. And believe me when I say this, you inspired so many people Especially after September 11th. It was like a competition for Arabs like me and anybody in writing or speaking. We're always joking around. I go, wait a minute, look what they're doing. We could do the same thing. And
yeah, we got lucky. It was really, we just had time. It was great timing.
It was,
and nobody was there to fill the void. And so myself and Maz and a couple of other comics, we really did trailblazing. We really did. And again, tip my hat to Mitzi Shore. She gave us the platform.
Yeah.
She would put us up on stage, right with all the other comedy greats, performing at her world famous club and delivering too. Not like she was doing us a favor. Like we all had, funny stuff to talk about, and it was close to us, so we could talk about it. We could poke fun at ourselves. We could be self-deprecating, and then that kind of led. We ended up getting our own first ever Comedy Central special. It was the first ever Middle Eastern comedy special on national television. That garnered the interest of a promoter that took us on a U.S. tour. And then that took us over to the Middle East eventually, where we were, performing in front of 20,000 people across, the Middle Eastern, North Africa region, Egypt, Saudi, Dubai, Lebanon, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar. It was a really special time back then. And then from there, that's when the floodgates opened up. Then you started getting guys like Mo Amer and Rami Youssef and Hassan Minhaj, and the list goes on for all these sort of young up-and-coming comics who didn't have to look over their shoulder anymore. They were like, okay, well, Ahmed and Maz and these guys did it, we can do it.
Right.
And so it was inspiring for them. It was inspiring for me to watch, this new voice kind of come to the forefront.
And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue the interview with Egyptian-American comedian Ahmed Ahmed. We'll be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Clap your hands if you're happy and you know it and you really want.
5-year-old Lila and her mom are on their way home from Grandma's, singing Lila's favorite song. A few blocks away, 25-year-old Dylan is visiting friends at a small party. He finishes off his last beer,
later, skater,
gets in his truck, and starts for home. Mom and Lila turn onto Maple Street.
If you're happy and you
So does Dylan.
If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray, hooray!
Every 50 minutes in the United States, someone dies in a crash involving a driver impaired by alcohol or drugs. If you're impaired and you know it, don't drive. Drive sober. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937. Are you going to start a restaurant or a grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Najee Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. call Najee Abood 734-744-9796.
Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
And what was cool, I mean, you really kind of, when you look at it, you really did open the door to Rami. He's a very talented guy, and Mo Ammar, they're both really talented, but you made it possible, I think, in my opinion, to allow
Tell them that.
well, but that's the Arab community. We're very narrow focused, unfortunately. But what was interesting about your comedy was it was professional comedy. I mean, I always like to say I did some stand-up comedy, and the only reason I got some notoriety was in Jackie Mason when he discovered I was Palestinian. He got upset, and that created.
Oh yeah, I think I heard something about that.
Yeah.
I remember reading that. Yeah.
But I wasn't really a professional stand-up comedian. I looked at it as an opportunity to make like a political statement. You're a comedian. You're not out there to make a political statement other than, hey, saying that Arabs are good people. Correct? Or are you?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, just talking, just trying to humanize our culture and normalize our culture. I don't have to say or do anything political. Just saying that you're from the Middle East, saying that you're Muslim, that's political already. Just by default, we're political. So I never came out. I never did any, I never talked about President Bush. I never had one Bush joke, not one. I didn't really criticize the American government. I would make fun of myself, like traveling through airport security and, being randomly checked, or, trying to date, in America, or, my immigrant parents, forcing Islam on me. And it was more about my point of view out to the world and how the world perceives me, where, as opposed to saying, we're Arabs, you have to listen to us, and screw America. That wasn't my point of view. My point of view was more, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, self-deprecating, making fun of myself, because when you make fun of yourself, nobody can make fun of you. You've already beat them to the punch. That said, I grew up watching a lot of stand-up comedy, and I spent 16 years at the Comedy Store every night of the week performing. Sometimes they have 3 different rooms, so sometimes you get up three times a night.
Wow. And
then I'd go down to the Laugh Factory and go to the Improv, and sometimes I wouldn't even perform. I would just sit in the back of the room and watch comedy, because I just wanted to learn the tricks of the trade. Everybody thinks they're funny. Everybody thinks they can get up there and do it. It's not that easy. It took me many years to hone my craft. I mean, I even, to this day, I've been doing stand-up comedy around the world for almost 30 years. I'm currently in Chicago. I did 2 shows last night at the Comedy Bar, which is a really cool, kind of small, boutique. I consider it an A-list club, but it's small, probably seats 150, 200 people. But the first show I did was fun. Second show, not so great. So you're never, you can't slam dunk every basketball with comedy. You're going to have off nights, and that's just the name of the game. And if you can muscle through those off nights and shrug it off and say, all right, well, just put it behind me, learn, and then move forward. But I'm still learning. I'm still crafting and honing and trying to get my voice, my point of view down.
Well, even though I'm older than you, I still look up to you as a comedian, because when it comes to Arab stand-up comedy, believe me, Ahmed, your face is the icon of Arab comedy in the United States.
I appreciate that.
And I know
Thank
that you said thank you, but you kind of got out of Hollywood movies, went deep into stand-up comedy. Are you thinking about getting back into it? And is there ever going to be a day, for example, when we have like one of those sitcoms? Have you been working towards it? Like everyone,
Yeah. Well,
Bella, or you know, Chico,
everybody loves
Ahmed and the
everybody loves
Man,
Ramadan.
Ahmed and the Man.
No, you know, I tried to pitch again. Like I've always been ahead of my time. I've always tried to pitch stuff to Hollywood, and they just love to shut you down. The game has changed a little bit now. I mean, you know, Rami has his show on Hulu. It's not a sitcom, but you know, it's kind of like a culturally, you know, awkwardly dark comedy. I haven't watched all of the episodes and seasons, but I actually auditioned for his show, and then you know you have Mo Amer who had his show on Netflix, I think, for a couple seasons, but they're not sitcom; they're single camera comedies. So, are we ever, you know, going to have a sitcom? I hope, you know, I hope that one of us pops and you know gets Hollywood or one of these streaming platforms to greenlight a show. You know, do I ever want to get back into acting? Yes. To answer your question in a nutshell, do I want to audition for stuff and put myself on tape and try to like really fight for these parts? No. It's very time consuming. People don't realize, you know, when your agent calls you and says, hey, I have an audition for you, it's due tomorrow, and you have to memorize 10 pages of dialogue and put yourself on tape. And then, you know, it takes hours and hours to do that. Or if you go to the audition in person, you got to drive across town. You got to find parking. You got to wait in a room with 50 other actors who look just like you, and or maybe, you know, maybe doing the same thing you're doing. And so it's, for me, it's a bit of a, you know, jumping through too many hoops. So what I did was I'm just focusing on my stand-up, and I'm pulling back, and I have technically 3, maybe 4 TV show ideas that I've created. I've written scripts. I have pitch decks. I'm developing. They're not necessarily Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim oriented or based, but the main characters are. There's 2 films that I wrote. One is a kind of a spoof on, I don't want to give it away, but it's a kind of a spoof movie on a Middle Eastern guy who has a mistaken identity crisis going on. And the other one is a romantic comedy. And it's very mainstream. And a friend of mine said, don't write anything that's too, you know, Arab or Muslim oriented. Just write a movie about a guy who happens to be that, but he's not, that's not the main focus. And then you'll get Middle America and the rest of the world to kind of jump on board.
Well, isn't that what a lot of these comedians like Ray Romano, everybody loves Raymond. It wasn't an Italian-American sitcom.
No.
The Italian-American aspect was there. You don't, and I think I'd love to see, and I hope you're very successful with this, because it'd be great to see a mainstream sitcom where the character happens to be an Arab American. It doesn't have to be like an Arab focused thing, but just seeing an Arab in a role in a sitcom, because comedy is so powerful to get people to change their attitudes.
I was on a sitcom for 3 years called Sullivan and Son. That was on TBS. It was 2012, 13, and 14.
I remember it. Great stuff.
And I played, it was from the producer of Cheers, Vince Vaughn, who's also a Chicago guy. He was the executive producer alongside with Peter Billingsley and Steve Byrne, who's a Asian American comedian. He wrote it and produced it. And they wrote a role for me. My character's name, coincidentally, was Ahmed. And I played an Egyptian American guy who basically was a tow truck driver in his 40s and a hopeless romantic.
I remember.
And I thought maybe that would spin off into letting me have my own show, and it didn't. But that's not to say that will never come. I mean, for me, my dream job would to be on a sitcom that showcases, you know, my upbringing, my family. You know, my dad was, God rest his soul, he was quite the character. And he does kind of have that, you know, whatchamacallit. My dad's a cross between like Red Fox from Sanford and Son.
Right.
And And gosh, what was All in the Family? What was his name? Archie Bunker.
Archie.
my dad was kind of like that guy, a little bit more lighthearted and funny, but you know, he had that old school like immigrant, you know, not racist, but had like, you know, racial undertones. And you know, he was an immigrant from Egypt who didn't speak any English and was very sort of compartmentalized in his own little world. But he was, you know, he would be the star of the show.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's very much Sanford and Son. Like I would be the straight guy, my dad would be the funny guy.
I would love to see that happen, because I know people say, well, you do have sitcoms. You got Rami and you got Muammar, and not to knock them, I love both their shows, but those are 8 episode seasons.
Well, they're not sitcoms because there's no live audience.
Oh, and interesting.
Yeah, they're all single camera. You know, there's funny stuff in there, but I guess, you know, if you can make a live audience laugh in a scripted show, for me, that's comedy gold.
Right.
And that's why shows, if you look at all the successful shows on television, it's funny because when I was on Sullivan and Son, we would do 2 tapings a day, one in the afternoon, one at night. And once a week, we would shoot every Tuesday, and we had live audience. We had 200 people in a live audience, studio audience. And I remember people used to comment on my social media or send me like nasty messages saying your show's not funny. Too bad you guys have to use a laugh track. I'm like, we didn't have a laugh track. Those were real people with real laughs.
You gotta ignore that stuff, Ahmed.
But we also had some of the best actors on the planet on our show. We had Christine Ebersol, who's a 2-time Tony Award winning actress. We had Dan Lauria, who was the father on Wonder Years. We had Brian Doyle Murray, who's Bill Murray's brother, who he wrote Caddyshack. Like, we had some really talented people on our show. So you know, I was number 10 on the Sun, you know, the cast list. I had a very minimal, you know, role on the show, but no, we had live studio audience. And for me, you know, if I had my cake and can eat it too, I would love to be on a sitcom for several years, 10 years, and have it be, you know, along the lines of like Everybody Loves Raymond or Sanford and Son, Chico and the Man, you know, George Lopez, that kind of, you know, cultural situation comedy where you have this sort of dysfunctional family that's a kind of fish out of water trying to you know, be cohesive in our Western society.
I mean, listen, I would love to have you back on the show another time. You are the king of comedy when it comes to Arab Americans. Pharaoh,
Thanks,
we'll call you the Pharaoh of comedy.
The Pharaoh comedy.
Confuse the American public, okay? But seriously, you opened the door for a lot of people. I owe you my brief fun venture into comedy to you. You inspired me, and I really hope that you do break that glass ceiling and we see a sitcom where an Arab American is a part of the sitcom. Doesn't have to be an Arab sitcom, but you just happen to be an Arab American character. I think more Americans would learn about us through that and all the books they can write about the Middle East history. Ahmed Hamid, my guest, Instagram at Ahmed Comedy, correct?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me on your program, and thank you again for being such, you know, a supporter and cheerleader of my career. And you know, it's refreshing to have people from your own culture really root for you. So I thank you for that.
And of course, I want to thank everybody for joining us here at the Ray Hanania Show, hosted by the U.S. Arab Radio Network and brought to you by our sponsor, Arab News newspaper at arabnews.com. I'm Ray Hanania. We will see you again next week, every Wednesday, 5 p.m. right here in Detroit and WNZK AM 690 and in Washington, D.C. on WDMV AM 700. Talk to you later, everybody. Bye-bye.